The American frontier was a land where people often disappeared, without leaving behind a single footprint worth remembering. Small railroad stations stood like lonely islands between endless plains, watching strangers arrive with hope and leave with regret. Some travelers found fortune beyond those wooden platforms. Others found only heartbreak. Red Willow Station had witnessed both. One quiet autumn afternoon, while the golden prairie stretched beneath a cloudless sky, a young woman sat alone on the weathered wooden platform with two worn leather suitcases resting beside her. Dust clung to the hem of her faded brown coat, and her simple bonnet hid tear-filled eyes that had long forgotten how to hope. Hours passed. Passengers came and went. Families reunited. Cowboys loaded supplies. Merchants climbed aboard westbound trains. Yet no one stopped beside the lonely woman. Rumors traveled faster than locomotives across the frontier. Some whispered she had been abandoned by her wealthy fiancé after losing her family's ranch. Others claimed she carried nothing except misfortune. A few believed dangerous. Men had been searching every station for a woman matching her description. Whether true or false, nobody wished to become involved. Several ranchers glanced toward her before quietly turning away. Among the departing travelers stood Ethan Walker, a hard-working cowboy whose modest ranch lay nearly 20 miles beyond Red Willow. He had spent years rebuilding his family's land after ruthless cattle thieves destroyed nearly everything his father had worked for. Life had taught Ethan to recognize silent suffering. He noticed the untouched luggage, the untouched meal sitting beside her, the empty expression that belonged to someone who had nowhere left to go. Most people ignored loneliness because it reminded them of their own. Ethan could not. Instead of walking away, he crossed the dusty platform and offered the frightened stranger something she had not received in a very long time. Simple kindness. No questions, no demands, no expectations. The station master quietly watched from the doorway, surprised that anyone would risk helping a stranger surrounded by so many dangerous rumors. As the evening sun painted the prairie gold, Ethan invited the young woman to rest at his ranch until she found a safer future. She accepted with visible hesitation. Neither realized their meeting had already been noticed. From the second floor of the station hotel, two well-dressed men observed everything through dusty windows. One unfolded a faded map marked with neighboring ranch boundaries. The other opened a leather folder containing old inheritance papers bearing the same family name as the young woman. Neither smiled because of romance. They smiled because of land. As Ethan guided the wagon toward the distant prairie, hidden riders quietly followed from nearly half a mile behind, keeping themselves concealed beneath rolling hills and drifting dust. They had searched months for the missing heiress. Now they knew exactly where she was going. Ethan's ranch stood, quietly beneath the Wyoming sky, surrounded by split-rail fences, grazing horses, and rolling fields that had survived droughts, cattle raids, and bitter winters. It was not the largest ranch in the territory, but it carried something far more valuable than wealth. It carried peace. For the first time in months, the young woman found a place where fear no longer followed every step. She helped prepare meals before sunrise, repaired torn blankets, tended the vegetable garden, and cared for injured horses with remarkable patience. Slowly, the empty ranch began to feel like a home again. Ethan never forced her to reveal her past. He believed trust should grow naturally like prairie grass after spring rain. Unknown to both of them, danger had already reached the valley. The two strangers from Red Willow Station were agents of Victor Grayson, a ruthless cattle baron whose fortune had been built on forged deeds, bribed officials, and stolen ranches. Years earlier, he had orchestrated the destruction of the young woman's family, forcing them from one of the richest properties in the territory. Everyone believed the rightful heir had died, everyone except Grayson. His spies had finally found her. One cold evening, while repairing a broken corral fence, Ethan discovered fresh horse tracks circling the ranch. The riders had deliberately remained out of sight, leaving only enough evidence to remind him they were watching. That same night, an unknown rider threw a sealed envelope onto the ranch porch before disappearing into the darkness. Inside rested copies of old land deeds, family records, inheritance documents. Every page carried the young woman's name. The truth emerged like lightning splitting a storm. She was the legal owner of thousands of acres stretching across the neighboring valley, including rich grazing fields and freshwater streams worth a fortune. The attack years earlier had never been random. Her family's downfall had been carefully planned. Victor Grayson wanted the inheritance completed before anyone discovered the surviving heir. Ethan understood immediately. Helping her had unknowingly placed both of them directly in the path of one of the territory's most powerful criminals. The following afternoon, smoke rose from the northern pasture. Several barns had been set ablaze. Panicked cattle scattered across open fields, while masked riders disappeared toward Black Rock Canyon. When Ethan reached the house, every room stood untouched. Everything remained exactly where it belonged. Everything, except her. Only her bonnet rested quietly beside the front door. Black Rock Canyon had become Victor Grayson's fortress. Hidden among towering cliffs stood abandoned mining buildings, converted into outlaw camps, protected by armed gunmen loyal only to money. The kidnapped heiress was imprisoned inside an old warehouse while forged inheritance papers waited upon a rough wooden table. Grayson believed victory was inevitable. Without the rightful owner's freedom, every ranch in the valley would soon belong to him. But greed often blinded powerful men to quiet determination. Ethan rode alone into the canyon before sunrise. His saddlebag carried something more dangerous than bullets. Evidence. Weeks earlier, he had secretly copied every forged land deed, every false survey map, and every witness statement exposing Grayson's criminal empire. Those documents had already reached the territorial marshal through trusted ranchers living beyond the valley. The rescue had become something much larger than saving one woman. It had become the chance to free every family Grayson had robbed. As dawn broke over the canyon, dozens of lawmen and neighboring ranchers surrounded the outlaw camp from every direction. Gunfire echoed between towering rock walls. Horses thundered across loose gravel. Outlaws fled through narrow trails only to find every escape blocked. Years of fear ended before sunset. Victor Grayson was captured alive. His forged deeds were burned beneath the watchful eyes of the territorial judge. Every stolen ranch was returned to its rightful owner. The young woman's inheritance was finally restored. But the land no longer represented wealth alone. It represented justice. Weeks later, peace returned to Ethan's ranch. Fresh fences replaced burned timber. New calves wandered safely through green pastures. Children from neighboring ranches once again filled the valley with laughter. The young woman chose not to return immediately to her inherited estate. Instead, she remained beside the cowboy who had offered kindness. When everyone else had looked away, their story spread from one frontier town to another. Travelers no longer remembered Red Willow Station as the place where a lonely woman waited alone. They remembered it as the place where one small act of compassion changed two lives forever. The greatest legends of the Old West were never built only by fast gunfighters or wealthy ranchers. Sometimes they were built by ordinary people who refused to ignore someone else's pain. And on the endless American frontier, where betrayal had once written every chapter of their lives, courage, justice, and love finally wrote the ending they both deserved. The end.